Okay, hello. This is like the 5th time of me trying to shoot this intro because I originally had it on my computer on a pillow, and it kept sliding. But anyway, hi. This video is going to be about, some tips and guidance for people who are trying to interview for RA positions or research assistant positions within like social sciencey type of fields. So kind of tailored toward people who are trying to find positions and, in like sociology and psychology, public health, maybe like nutrition could also be a thing, or like overall fields of like health equity, health inequality, health disparities, or just kind of stuff like that. Yeah, so basically, yeah, I'm sure this video will also be helpful for people who are kind of interested in research assistant positions for like maybe like bio labs or like physics labs or like neuroscience type of like like chopping mice brain in half labs. But this one is going to be kind of more tailored towards what I am doing and what my studies were. Yeah, so I guess, who am I? So I recently graduated. I guess recently is a stretch. I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill in May of 2024. I majored in psychology and sociology, double major, and I also minored in social and economic justice. And I am currently working as a research assistant within a center at UNC, the Center for Health Equity Research. And yeah, so I guess to get to that, it took a long time. I had to go through lots of interviews that didn't, I thought some of them went fine. I guess it didn't. But yeah, I definitely went through lots of different interviews, lots of different, second round interviews, lots of ghosting, lots of job applying, which sucked. That post-graduation job hunt isn't always the best feeling, but whatever. Sometimes you get through it. And yeah, so I guess this video can maybe serve as some guidance for people going through that or dreading going through that. So I guess the first thing I have to say about finding an RA interview or an RA position within like this type of realm, like social sciencey type of realm, is that first, it's pretty hard, I would say. There's definitely a lot of competition. There's definitely, these are my notes. There's definitely like limited funding, especially after COVID. Obviously it's a decent amount of time after COVID, but like the government like kind of gave like COVID grants for lots of research, and that has kind of dried up or been used. So it's been definitely a little bit harder to find positions, especially within like social sciencey, I would say. And this is also my experience, and also coming from some of my friends who are RAs and like more like neuroscience, like physics, like type of stuff. They definitely also have corroborated what I've been saying. Because definitely lots of competition, lots of like limited funding. Also just like there's a lot of like criteria and lots of like qualifications they might seek, even if they don't say it specifically on the job application. That's kind of something that I had to kind of deal with. And also the communications from the people you were potentially interviewing with can be kind of lax. There's definitely lots of stuff going on in research, so I don't blame them too much, but it's also like, okay, getting ghosted or no response at all is not really the best feeling. So yeah. Okay, yeah, so maybe it wasn't the best to start out the video with a bunch of negatives about the process in the industry, but I think it's important to kind of know what you're getting into. And honestly, with the way that everything is right now, with the way the job market is, to the way that people don't really care about your time, they just ghost you no matter what, I feel like you probably already know how it's gonna work. But yeah, just FYI. And also, this video is definitely going to be it's going to be a US centered kind of video. I grew up in the US. All my experiences are kind of going to be within the U.S. And even more specifically, I went to UNC and I work at UNC currently, so I definitely know the kind of the process at like big research institutions the best. But I would say that it's pretty similar um, between public and private schools. Some of my friends they work as RAs at Duke, so and it's pretty much the same. I also applied to some places at Duke and had some interviews. But anyway, yeah. So I guess how the interview process will go. Basically, once you have applied to a position, you probably will get an email from either, let's say, maybe like a senior, like a clinical research coordinator, or maybe the PI, or maybe like an HR if you are working with like maybe like hospitals. So yeah, so I guess some places to first kind of figure out where to apply. I would say definitely look at like university career websites. Um, Definitely lots of different options there. You applying directly at the university. So once you fill out like your profile, it will save usually, so you don't have to go through the annoying process of typing, all your dates of what odd jobs you've done, or like all the descriptions of your research experiences and stuff like that. So that's good. So yeah, I would say university career websites. Also, LinkedIn also does have like some good stuff. You can like kind of like set it to be like look for research assistant jobs around me or around the country, and they can they'll show you some stuff. I definitely have seen some stuff there. So yeah, and what else? I guess Indeed also works. And also this could be like kind of much more work and kind of niche, but you can also just kind of like if you know of any professors, you can kind of like go on their websites or like go on their Twitter. Sometimes they usually like repost or I think retweet like university like job like RA positions, or like people who have like just started new labs and they're like, oh my god, like new lab, and then they retweet it and you can maybe like see if that new lab is hiring. So yeah, that could also be a place to look at once you apply, and once you have received an email asking you to attend like the first interview or preliminary interview. I think that definitely can be exciting, but also pretty nerve-wracking. Usually, in my experience, they will email you and ask you to pick a date for your preliminary interview, and usually that day is like maybe like a weekend. Once you get that email, you should probably prepare a little bit for the interview. I wouldn't say to prepare a lot. It can definitely, I feel like sometimes it's like kind of like a bell curve. If you like prepare a lot, you get anxiety gets more, even though you start preparing more. So I would say try to just keep it a happy medium. Don't prepare too much, but definitely understand obviously what the project is about, obviously what your tasks are to do if you are offered this position, and definitely emphasize your skills and your expertise and how past experiences, past projects, and how that ties into kind of what this project is. Also, definitely you can tailor it on who is interviewing you. I've had interviews where I have immediately talked to the PI on the first interview, and I've had other interviews where it's been like the clinical research coordinator along with another person of the staff, like a research project manager, or it's like a research coordinator with other RAs on the call. So it can definitely depend on, I guess, the team and how busy the PI or how busy they are in general. Generally, for your preliminary interviews, it will start out with whoever is interviewing you. They will start out, with an intro of their project or of their team or the center that they're in, and just kind of, go through what it's about, maybe what phase of the project they're in, maybe what they're seeking in you, and then they will kind of slowly lead you to answering the question of like, why are you interested in this position? And I would say there's definitely lots of different ways to answer this. I've always am a little confused on when people are like, why do you want to join this position, if they're asking you to just only answer that, or if they're also asking you to explain your background as well. But generally, my kind of go-to answer would be, first, I would say, this position is adjective. This position is so cool and so interesting. I'm passionate about whatever the topic is, and then I would kind of go into a little bit about like talking about the topic and kind of making it clear that you are interested and you kind of do know about the project and kind of what you're talking about. So I guess an example could be like, if the project is about like, maybe like improving childhood educational equity, or just, improving like schools outcome and stuff like that. Maybe you could talk about how, just briefly, you could be like, I'm interested in educational equity, especially especially since we've been seeing lots of educational gaps and declines since COVID. That can definitely kind of signal that you do know what you're talking about, and that I think it's also important to know that interviews are also kind of like a showing off type of place. Like, you're not gonna just boast and brag like, look at me, I got all A+s or whatever. You don't have to say that, but I think talking about the topic and talking about the field is a subtle, it's kind of like a subtle flex. You can kind of like be like, oh, look at me, I know what I'm talking about, without kind of boasting too apparently, because unfortunately interviews are going to be kind of a thing that you have to show off in. So if that's something you struggle with, as I do, it can definitely be hard to communicate that you do know what you're talking about. So I would recommend you getting comfortable with that and like practicing before, because it would kind of suck to like kind of be a little modest in interviews when you probably should not be, and then not get that job. There could be multiple reasons why you didn't get that job, but at least, if you talk about yourself in that way and if you communicate that you know stuff, it might not be that reason. I guess, when you're answering the question, why you're interested in this position, you can also go into your background and experiences. Definitely, I think tying back your research and or educational experiences is super important, because especially if you just graduated from undergrad, you don't really have a lot of, I guess, like industry or like a lot of experiences as a full-time research assistant. So, highlighting, maybe if you're an RA in an undergrad lab, or if you did a thesis, or if if you're interviewing for a position that is like focusing on like, children, or like childcare, maybe you are a babysitter, just highlighting anything, is always really important. And also it's important to mention like future goals and how this position will kind of help you to attain those. They will most likely already ask you, what are your future goals? Because if you're applying for an RA position, most people are going into this with a goal of getting a PhD, or a goal of being an MD, and stuff like that. So I think it's important to highlight that and mention it, because it shows that you have planned out some stuff and that you are trying to enact your goals, which is always nice and well. I guess generally, in my experience, after you answer the why are you interested in this position question, then the person interviewing you will probably go on to asking you about like just like interview questions, like common questions. So from my experience, some of the common questions that I were asked were also, I will be reading it from my list, so if I don't look up, that's what it's going to be. So basically, one common question was, what are some challenging situations in research that you have overcame? Another one is examples of you working in a team, specifically in research, or specifically about research. Next question is, what would you do if something happens that breaks protocol, and how would you deal with that? Another question that I was asked is, what strategies would you use to recruit the population at focus? I think that's also a big one, because RAs are definitely, it's pretty wide, what people can ask RAs to do. But I think one overall, one universal thing is, recruitment, and kind of getting the word out about the study. So I think having a good answer to that is really important. And I guess going off of that, another question that's commonly asked is like, how would you ensure continued participation? If the study is like longitudinal, if it's like a 6-month study, how would you ensure that participants, take their 6-month survey and stuff like that? And what else? Another question that was pretty common is like, how do you handle multiple projects? And like multitasking, I think that's a pretty common interview question everywhere. But I think having concrete examples of that are, preferably in research, is a good way to highlight that you have what it takes to be on the team, because it can definitely be a lot of stuff to do at once. And yeah, so I guess that is kind of gonna be the bulk of the interview, the back and forth from my experience in the first interview. And usually at the end, it's your turn to ask questions. So yeah, so I guess some common questions or some good questions that you can ask can be like, something that I've used is just, how does a team work together, / what does it look like? I think this is always a good question to ask, because if the PI is not really involved, but is one of those peers that's kind of overbearing, that can be kind of a lot sometimes. This question also kind of can shed a light on like how the, I guess, like dynamics of the team are. If it's like kind of like a nice little happy little team, maybe you can pick up on that in the I don't know, in their response. But if it's not, maybe you can also pick up on that. And I think it's important to enter a space where that's prioritized, where communication and building a relationship with the people you work with is prioritized, because work sucks, work is draining. So having people that mitigate that is always nice. And I guess another question you could ask is, what phase of the project are you currently in? They may answer that already, but maybe you could be like, can you provide me with some more detail, or could you explain this more? Another question could be, this question is kind of focused on like long-term career goals. A question that I've asked is like, where have other previous RAs, like where are they now? Like where have they ended up at? I think that can be always helpful to kind of see what someone who was in your shoes, where they ended up, but maybe they changed career paths while they were being in the position that you're interviewing for, or maybe they stuck with what they want. So I guess that were some tips about the preliminary to first interview. Usually there's most likely always going to be a second interview. And in those interviews, honestly, it's more of the same, I would say, in my experience. It's definitely more personal. Of course, there's going to be less people invited to that. I would say, okay, I've spent so much time trying to look up like how many people are invited to this. What are my chances to getting the job after a second interview invite-ins or acceptance? I think from what online says, it seems to be, from what online says, and also kind of what I've gathered, it seems to be about usually maybe 3 to 5 people they invite for a second interview. So I feel like your chances are pretty decent to get that. But, in these interviews, it's definitely more personal, I would say. It's that, I've had PIs like ask more about me, like, what do I want to do? And like, tell me about yourself and stuff like that, which is always kind of weird to hear that from, a PI who's always, kind of, when you think of PIs, they're just like this figure in the sky, but they're not. And yeah, I think also they'll definitely ask you more specific questions about the project and about maybe like research methods. I remember one second interview I had to kind of explain how I use qualitative methods in my thesis that I did for senior year. So definitely, if you have experience in your resume, they will probably most likely specifically ask you about how that happened or what method you use and stuff like that. And yeah, so I guess after the second interview, I don't think there should be a third interview. I have not ever been asked for a third interview. Maybe 'cause I did get rejected from jobs that I've had a second interview for. Maybe they asked 2 people for a third interview, but I don't really think that's how it works. So yeah, I would say overall there's probably only going to be 2 interviews. And yeah, I guess general tips, apply on university career websites. There's definitely, like I said earlier, it's a really easy way to ensure that all your stuff is saved. So if you see another application you want to submit for, you can just do it quickly. I think also I can definitely link down below, like maybe you want to focus on university settings and I don't know, maybe your university does not have a lot of opportunities. There's definitely, there's a survey that the National Research for Higher Education, some organization, they release that every year, and that shows, which universities have the most research funding and which universities conduct the most research. So I can link that down below if you want to take a look at that. What else? Make sure your resume is up to date. And also, usually the interviews are online, in my experience. So I would say to just arrive to the Zoom maybe, like 3 to 5 minutes early. It's nothing really that big of a deal. You don't have to be there 15 minutes early, but I would say I think it's important to just be there a little early. And of course, send the thank you email after you complete the interview. It can be pretty generic. Mine was pretty kind of generic, but I think it's important. It shows that you care enough, at least, to spend an email that takes like 2 minutes, so why not? And you will get ghosted, and you will get lots of rejections. It was a lot to, get rejection after rejection and get ghosted even after you've done like two interviews and stuff like that, which sucks. And it sucks, but once you get that job, you will have experience, and I think hopefully it'll be easier if you want to change jobs or if you want to move on in your career. It'll be easier to kind of do that once you get past this first hurdle. I know it can be really hard, especially everything is hard right now. Finding a job fucking sucks. But you'll get through it. Okay, other arm, because my right arm hurts. Hopefully this video helped a little bit. I know it was kind of vlog style and kind of me just talking, so hopefully someone learned something and feels more confident. I would say, first of all, if anyone watches this and if they want more, organized information, I can definitely sit down and clearly write out my points and make a video on that if someone wants to, or someone wants me to. So just comment if anyone watches. But yeah, I guess thanks for watching, and check the description for links for stuff, and yeah, good luck.